One book at a time. Today's selection is The Interpretation of Dreams.
Welcome to our channel, where stories are not just told, but felt. And today, we will begin a true adventure into yourself. What did you dream about last night when it could be a talking fish? Or you were flying across the deep blue sky without wings? Or even more frighteningly, a recurring dream about an exam for which you prepared nothing, even though you graduated from university long ago. Waking up with a sense of confusion, along with sometimes restlessness and sometimes feeling very strange. So have you ever wondered why last night you yourself dreamed of that thing, as well as why it was that image, along with that person or that emotion, and not something else? Most of us perhaps often brush those dreams aside and consider them random interference signals of the brain while resting, or a kind of mental waste that we do not need to bother with. Everyone dreams, don't they? When sometimes dreams are romantic, along with sometimes truly absurd, and sometimes make us break out in a cold sweat. So then we wake up and make a cup of coffee, and daily life continues, carrying those dreams into oblivion. But there was a man more than a century ago who dared to make a bold statement, along with an assertion that completely changed the way we perceive the world inside us. He did not accept that dreams were meaningless, but looked at them not as random fragments, but as pieces of a giant puzzle, along with a mysterious code waiting to be deciphered. That was Sigmund Freud. And he said an immortal sentence that dreams are the royal road to the unconscious. The royal road sounds truly powerful, doesn't it? Because for Freud, then dreams were not meaningless, and they were not random nonsense images. On the contrary, then they are the secret door, or a direct, straight path leading straight into the deep, unconscious realm within our souls. It is a treasure trove containing buried desires, along with hidden fears and internal conflicts that even when awake, then we do not dare or cannot face. He believed that every single dream, whether the most irrational or the weirdest, carries within it a message along with a deep meaning about ourselves, like a coded message sent from the very part of the mind that we least often touch. I bet there are things in your mind, along with things that you have never dared to say out loud, or even never dared to think about explicitly. Those could be secret desires along with ancient obsessions or instinctive cravings that are silently shaping who you are and shaping your decisions every day. And I also bet that for most of them, you do not realize their presence, because they hide in the dark and wait for an opportunity to reveal themselves. Imagine if you had the key to open that door, to read the code hidden in each strange image of your dream. Then what would you understand about yourself? You would see the most secret desires, along with the deepest motivations operating your life, and understand the real reasons behind the choices, along with the emotions that you sometimes cannot explain. And that is exactly the promise of this video. As in the upcoming journey, then we will together explore Freud's breakthrough ideas in the masterpiece, The Interpretation of Dreams, which is a book that changed the history of psychology and the way we perceive humans. We will not just learn about dry theory, because I want you, after finishing this video, to be able to start looking at your own dreams through a completely new lens. You will have a powerful tool to begin the journey of self-discovery, to decode the messages that your unconscious mind is trying to convey, so as to not only better understand what happens in your head when you close your eyes, but also to understand more deeply who you are when you open your eyes and live this life. Be ready, because the secret door to your unconscious is waiting to be opened. And I am certain that what you find behind that door will surprise you and possibly change the way you perceive yourself forever. Chapter 1: Dreams as Wish Fulfillment. Have you ever woken up from a strange dream with an indescribable feeling, both familiar and foreign, and then wondered, what on earth did I just dream about? We spend 1/3 of our lives sleeping, and during that time, we glide through worlds that are sometimes chillingly real, and at other times, unbelievably absurd. Since ancient times, humans have always tried to decode the mysterious messages from the world of dreams. Are they omens, warnings, or simply the random products of the brain when we fall asleep? In the 20th century, there was a man who devoted his entire life to trying to decode those mysterious messages, and he completely changed how we perceive the human mind. That was Sigmund Freud, with his masterpiece, The Interpretation of Dreams, a book that I personally believe laid the foundation for the entire field of modern psychology. Today, we will begin our journey exploring this classic book, starting with Chapter 1, Dreams as Wish Fulfillment. Our goal in this section is to grasp Freud's most core argument about the purpose of dreams. So, what is Freud's most fundamental and core argument about the purpose of dreams? It is simple. Dreams are wish fulfillment. It sounds a bit hard to believe, doesn't it? Or perhaps there is something very intuitive about it. It means that every dream, whether you remember it or not, no matter how meaningless, confusing, or even terrifying it may seem, is an attempt by the unconscious mind to fulfill a certain wish, need, or desire. Freud once called dreams the royal road to the unconscious, and that road, according to him, always leads to a single point: the satisfaction of a desire, a wish that we might not recognize when awake, or that might be repressed. To better understand this concept, Freud often began with the simplest examples, which are the dreams of children. Think about a child. Suppose that little one goes to sleep feeling ravenously hungry because they missed dinner. That night, what does the child dream about? Very likely, the child will dream of sitting at a table eating a grand feast with all kinds of candies and delicious food they love. Or, if the child wants a new toy, they will dream of playing with that toy. This is the simplest and clearest example of wish fulfillment. What is the wish here? To be fed, to be full, or to own a favorite toy? And the dream has created that reality for the child. Children's dreams are often very direct and easy to understand because their minds are less covered and less censored by social expectations, anxieties, or complex internal conflicts that we as adults must face. Whatever the child wants, they will dream about it in an almost original form. But now, let us think about the dreams of us adults. If dreams are only wish fulfillment, then why are adult dreams so complex, confusing, and sometimes even terrifying? I have never dreamed of winning the jackpot, even though I want to very much, nor have I ever dreamed of flying in the sky like a superhero, even though that would be great. Instead, I dream of being lost in a maze with no way out, or running away from something formless, or forgetting an important test tomorrow, even though I graduated many years ago. Why are the wishes of us adults not expressed clearly and directly like those of children? Why are they covered under strange shells, confusing symbols, and scenarios that are sometimes baffling or even nightmares? Did Freud overlook some important part of dreams? Or is there some mysterious mechanism operating in our unconscious mind that causes wishes to be distorted and deformed to the point of being unrecognizable? This is the big question that Freud spent thousands of pages answering, and it is also where our journey of decoding dreams truly begins. So, up until now, we have an important foundation. Every dream, according to Freud, is wish fulfillment. Although you might not recognize it immediately, and that is what we will explore next. In the next chapter, we will go deeper into why these wishes are covered and disguised in strange symbols and confusing scenarios. We will explore the dream work and how our unconscious mind transforms secret desires into nights filled with hidden stories. Chapter 2: The Censorship Mechanism. Why are dreams so strange? In the previous chapter, we laid the foundation together, believing that dreams are not random, meaningless images, but a royal road leading into the subconscious. But perhaps the bigger question remains: why are dreams so strange? Why do we dream of irrational things, disjointed images, and events without a beginning or an end that make us just shake our heads in weariness upon waking Have you ever woken up and told a truly absurd dream to your friends? Something like, "Hey, last night I dreamed I was riding a flying bicycle through a banana forest. Then I met a cat that spoke Lao, and it was even wearing a lime green helmet." Your friends just burst out laughing, and you don't understand what it means either. This is exactly what Freud spent his life trying to decode. Freud introduced two extremely important concepts, which are the keys for us to begin unveiling the mystery of dreams. They are manifest content and latent content. Imagine a dream as an encrypted letter. Manifest content is what you see, what you remember, and what you tell your friends. It is the surface story of the dream. It is like the tip of an iceberg, only the visible part that the naked eye can see. The disjointed images, the events without beginning or end, the strange characters, all those strange things we just talked about are the manifest content. It is the final result, the edited product of our minds. But behind that strange story is a hidden message, a deep meaning that your mind is trying to convey. That is the latent content. This is the meat of the dream, the original script, the unedited idea. Latent content contains secret desires, fears, internal conflicts, and instinctive urges that you may not be aware of while awake. So why don't we dream directly about those latent wishes? Why does our mind have to go to the trouble of encoding them into strange stories? This is when Freud introduced an extremely important character in our minds, which is the censor. You know, Freud believed there is a gatekeeper or censor working tirelessly in our minds, especially in the sleep state. Imagine him or her as a strict gatekeeper, guarding the boundary between the unconscious and the conscious. What is the duty of this censor? It is to protect us from thoughts, primitive instincts, dark desires, and internal conflicts that society does not accept, or simply things that could cause shock or extreme anxiety if they appeared nakedly in our consciousness. If dark thoughts and forbidden desires were allowed to appear clearly and nakedly in dreams, what would happen? We would be shocked, wake up in panic, or even have terrible nightmares. The censor does not want that to happen because its ultimate goal is to maintain peace of mind and ensure our sleep proceeds as peacefully as possible. Therefore, to overcome the tight guard of the censor, the latent content, the real desires and conflicts, must find a way to disguise itself. It must transform, cover up, use symbols, metaphors, or rearrange the story in a confusing and irrational way. The dream must beat around the bush, It must use metaphors so as not to be recognized and blocked by the censor. This is exactly why dreams are so strange. The strange images and irrational details you encounter in dreams are the shell, the disguise that the latent content wears to slip through the censorship circle. It is like trying to hide a secret message within an abstract painting. The surface might be a mess of colors and confusing lines, but behind it lies a carefully encoded deep meaning. For example, you might dream that you are soaring in the sky, feeling weightless and absolutely free. That is the manifest content. Meanwhile, the latent meaning could be a longing to escape the burdens of current life, a desire for freedom, and not being bound by anything. If the desire for freedom is so intense that the censor deems it excessive or unrealistic in waking life, it will be disguised as a romantic flying image. Or, if you dream of a snake, it might not be a common fear of snakes. The latent content could be anxiety about a toxic relationship or a sense of threat from some force that you are not yet clearly aware of. In summary, a dream is a sophisticated game of hide and seek of the mind. Manifest. Content is the shell, the strange story you remember. Latent content is the jewel inside, the real meaning, the deep wishes and conflicts. And the censor is the artist who created those sophisticated disguises, turning worrying things into confusing images to protect our sleep and our peace. So then, how does our mind transform deep meanings into those strange stories? What tricks has the censor used to turn latent content into manifest content? That is the story of the dream work mechanisms, a topic that we will dig into together in the next chapter. Don't miss it. Chapter 3, Condensation. One face, 1,000 meanings. This is the first and perhaps the most impressive mechanism that Sigmund Freud pointed out in his classic book titled The Interpretation of Dreams. Think of it as one of the first magic tricks our brain performs when we close our eyes. So, what is condensation? Simply put, it is the extraordinary ability of the mind to compress countless pieces of information, memories, thoughts, and emotions into a single image, a symbol, or even a face in a dream. It is like storing a massive encyclopedia on a tiny USB drive, or condensing the entire essence of a long book into a single meaningful maxim. Imagine this. During the day, we experience thousands of things, from conversations, news we read, faces passing by on the street, to secret worries or sudden joys. When we go to sleep, the mind does not just copy exactly everything that happened. No, it is a surrealist artist, a master editor. It selects, distills, and combines these disjointed pieces in an extremely creative way. The result is that an image, a symbol, or a face in your dream can carry the weight of an entire long story, a whole week, or even an entire phase of your life. To make it easier to visualize, let us look at Freud's classic example, one that perhaps many of us have experienced without realizing it. You dream of a stranger, a face you have never met in real life. However, the voice of that person is your mother's voice. And even more interestingly, the clothes that person is wearing happen to be your boss's office attire. This is not a meaningless coincidence, but a masterpiece of condensation. That stranger might represent a feeling of uncertainty, things you do not know, or unexplored aspects of yourself. The mother's voice carries memories of comfort, advice, care, or perhaps even control from a powerful figure in your life. Meanwhile, the boss's clothes are a clear symbol of work pressure, expectations, deadlines, or even anxieties about power and status. In a single image, your mind has combined a general feeling of strangeness and the unknown with a deep personal relationship like motherhood and a specific life situation such as work pressure and superiors. Every small detail in the dream, though seemingly irrational, is a piece that has been selected and compressed. That strange face could be a synthesis of people you have met, but who did not leave a deep impression or a general image of the other. The mother's voice carries all the memories and emotions related to her. The boss's suit carries the burden of work pressure, the desire for success, or the fear of failure. And it is not just information or memories, but emotions are also compressed into these condensed symbols. Suppose you are going through a period of extreme stress with a series of overwhelming problems like work, finance, and relationships. Instead of dreaming about a series of separate stressful events, the mind can create a single, highly condensed symbol to contain all those emotions. It could be a terrifying monster, a crumbling, ruined building, or a maze with no exit. The monster is not just a monster, but the embodiment of all the secret anxieties, fears, and helplessness you are facing. The ruined building is not just a structure, but an image for the breakdown and losses you are feeling or fearing. Broadly speaking, condensation allows the mind to express many ideas, wishes, and fears all at once by using a minimum amount of dream material. It is like mixing a cocktail. Each individual ingredient has a distinct flavor, but when blended together, they create a completely new, more complex, and richer taste. That cocktail is the condensed symbol in your dream, carrying the essence of many different ingredients in your mind. I remember once I dreamed I was standing in front of a giant library with towering bookshelves reaching the clouds, but all the books were empty. Initially, I was very confused, but later when I woke up, I realized it was the condensation of an entire period when I was learning many new things, feeling overwhelmed with the amount of knowledge to absorb, but at the same time feeling that I had not truly filled anything yet. The feeling of being both excited and anxious, both longing and empty, was all expressed through that image of the empty library. Condensation not only makes dreams shorter and easier to remember despite remaining mysterious, but it also makes them multidimensional and rich in meaning. It is a sign of how intelligent our minds are in processing and encoding information. It forces us, the dream decoders, to look beyond appearances, to dig deep into every detail and every seemingly random connection. When you understand condensation, you will begin to perceive dreams no longer as messy, meaningless images. You will see them as sophisticatedly encoded messages, jewels containing countless meanings from the depths of your subconscious. To decode these codes, we need to learn more about the other mechanisms of dream work. In the next chapter, we will explore another equally interesting mechanism called displacement, where emotions and meanings are shifted from one object to another in the dream. Chapter 4: Displacement. Distraction. We will dive deep into another mechanism, even more sophisticated in hiding the real meaning of dreams, which is displacement, also known as distraction. This is the twin brother of condensation in protecting us from truths that the subconscious wants to convey but are too dangerous to perceive clearly. To understand this better, let us begin by examining how important matters are blurred while trivial details are magnified. So, what is displacement? You can imagine it like this. In real life, have you ever been angry with your boss but gone home and taken it out on an innocent loved one? Or you are worried about a big project at the company, but find yourself inexplicably restless about the fact that the tree in front of your house seems a bit withered. That is a form of displacement of emotion and attention, and in dreams, this mechanism works exactly the same way, but with deeper meanings and details. Freud said that the most important, most core part of the subconscious message is blurred, pushed to the periphery, and even turned into an extremely tiny and trivial detail in the dream. It is like you deliberately place the most precious diamond in a dark, secluded corner of the room, while scattering trivial toys all over the center. Conversely, trivial, insignificant, and unimportant details from real life are magnified by your dream, becoming the center of attention. You might dream of a broken button that you did not care about during the day, but in the dream, it becomes a dramatic and meaningful event, leading to the result that you wake up with a feeling that something is not right, or wondering, why did I dream about this nonsense, since it has nothing to do with me? But in fact, that very nonsense is the perfect cover for a deeper meaning. Next, we will explain together why we often feel anxious about irrational things in dreams. This leads us to an important point about why we often feel anxious, fearful, or even confused about things that seem irrational in dreams. You dream that you are being chased by a pink kitten and feel extreme terror, or you are trying to solve a primary school math problem but are sweating as if competing in the Olympics, even though in reality you are a mathematics expert. These situations are not only irrational, but also trigger very real and very intense emotions, because the truth is that emotion, including fear, anxiety, or helplessness, is real, and it is not the product of a meaningless dream. It is the emotional energy from a repressed thought or wish, a real conflict that has been displaced from its original object to a harmless or even ridiculous detail in the dream. For example, the fear of being chased by a pink kitten might not be a fear of cats, but a fear of being controlled in a relationship, or a fear of something small that has the potential to cause great harm. Your brain is saying that this is a real emotion, but it has nothing to do with the cat or that math problem, and you should find something else, because the emotion has been displaced to hide its true origin. Finally, we look at how this mechanism helps trick the censor so that sleep is not interrupted. So, why complicate things so much? This is when our dream censor comes into play. Like condensation, displacement is a powerful tool to trick the censor, which is the part of our subconscious that wants to keep repressed thoughts from causing too much disturbance so that you can continue your sleep without interruption. If dreams directly expressed secret desires, deep fears, or strong moral conflicts clearly, you might startle awake in panic, or at least feel extremely uncomfortable. That is what the censor does not want to happen, because the ultimate goal is to protect sleep. Displacement helps offload these dangerous meanings by shifting their emotional energy to less shocking and less threatening details. It is like reading a coded letter where you see only strange characters that seem meaningless, but in fact, each of those characters carries a small part of an important message, sophisticatedly rearranged to avoid detection. Sleep is protected, and subconscious wishes are still expressed, albeit under a cover that is almost unrecognizable if you do not know how to decode it. It is a game of hide and seek where the most precious thing is hidden in the least expected place. Thus, displacement is a genius strategy of the mind to both express what it wants and keep us peaceful in our sleep by blurring the important, magnifying the trivial, and shifting emotions to protect us from our own naked truth. In the next chapter, we will explore another equally interesting mechanism, which is symbolization, the way the mind transforms abstract ideas into concrete images in dreams. Chapter 5: Symbols in Dreams. Imagine that your unconscious is writing a coded letter. It does not use direct words, but uses images, metaphors, and symbols. And our task is to learn how to read those symbols. Freud believed that there are certain images, objects, or actions that appear in the dreams of many people and have relatively similar symbolic meanings, much like a universal language of the unconscious. He gave many examples, but let us go through a few of the most common symbols, ones that you might have heard of somewhere before. First, let us talk about the house. Have you ever dreamed of being in a house or exploring strange rooms? In Freud's dreams, the house often represents our very selves or our bodies. Different rooms can symbolize different aspects of ourselves. An old, dilapidated house can be a sign of low self-esteem or feelings of hurt, while a large, bright house can be a symbol of freedom, comfort, and health. Furthermore, a balcony or a roof could represent the chest, and entrances or windows could be the natural openings of the body. It sounds a bit strange, doesn't it? But think about it, because that is our first shell. Next is the act of climbing stairs or climbing high. This is a symbol that Freud considered very clear, often related to sexual behavior, especially stimulation and climax. The feeling of going up and down, the rhythm, and reaching a peak are what Freud observed from the repetition of this symbol in his patients' dreams to reach that conclusion. It could be climbing a mountain, a ladder, or even flying up, because all can carry this meaning. And another symbol that many people fear is losing teeth. Have you ever dreamed of your teeth falling out, with feelings of helplessness, pain, and insecurity? Freud linked this to the fear of loss, especially the fear of being castrated, also known as castration anxiety, meaning the loss of power, masculinity or femininity, or fertility. It can also relate to feelings of weakness, loss of control, or anxiety about old age and the decline of strength. And this is when we must face a reality that Freud did not hesitate to present, which is that many symbols ultimately lead back to the theme of sexuality. Why is that? And why did Freud see sex everywhere in dreams? We must place ourselves in the context of his era, which was Austria at the end of the 19th and the beginning of the 20th century. It was an extremely conservative society, especially regarding sexual issues where everything related was taboo, covered up, and not allowed to be spoken of publicly. This repression pushed desires, longings, and internal conflicts related to sex deep into the unconscious. And when they could not manifest in real life, they found ways to creep into dreams, but in disguise and in the form of symbols. Freud believed that the sexual instinct or libido is one of the most fundamental drivers of humans. Therefore, it is not surprising that it finds a way to express itself on the stage of dreams, whether through images of weapons like guns and swords, which are often the phallus, or caves representing the vagina, or actions like climbing. It sounds a bit excessive, doesn't it? But try to look at it from that perspective. From an era where personal freedom was very limited, especially in this sensitive area, the unconscious had to find every way to say the things that the conscious mind could not accept or express. However, there is an extremely important note that I want you to take to heart, which is absolutely do not use generic dream dictionary books that you find online or in bookstores. Why is that? Because even though Freud provided common symbols, he always emphasized that the final meaning of a symbol must be explored through the dreamer's own personal associations. The house in your dream might be the childhood home you grew up in, carrying memories of safety. But for someone else, it might be a place of imprisonment and confinement. A snake might be a symbol of danger for one person, but for another, it is a symbol of healing, wisdom, or even a literal phallic image. The tree in your dream might be the starfruit tree in your grandmother's garden linked to an innocent childhood. But for me, it might be the image of a big project I am nurturing and wanting it to bud and flourish. What Freud teaches us is not an A equals B list, but a method of thinking. When a symbol appears in a dream, ask yourself what this means to me, what it makes me think of in my life, and what emotion it evokes. It is your personal associations, memories, and experiences that are the key to unlocking the message of the unconscious. And that is the true beauty of dream interpretation, according to Freud. It is not a rigid formula, but a personal journey of self-discovery. Symbols in dreams are pieces of a larger picture of ourselves, of secret desires, deep-seated fears, and unresolved conflicts. In the next chapter, we will go deeper into how to apply this knowledge to decoding a specific dream. But before finishing, I want you to start recording prominent symbols in your dreams. Do not rush to look for meanings online, but spend a little time asking yourself how I feel about this image and what it reminds me of in my life. Chapter 6: Nightmares and the Failure of the Defense Mechanism. In previous chapters, we have delved into one of Sigmund Freud's boldest and perhaps most famous arguments, which is that dreams are fundamentally a wish fulfillment, a stage where desires, whether repressed by the conscious mind or forgotten, are performed in some form. However, I bet that upon hearing that, a big question and a clear paradox appeared in your mind that we must face. If dreams are wish fulfillment and a place where we find joy, then why are there nightmares? Why are there long nights of drenching sweat and pounding heart, only to startle awake with a feeling of horror and extreme fear? I myself have experienced such long nights, and believe me when I say that no wishes were fulfilled in those moments. So, how to reconcile these two seemingly opposite concepts? Freud, with his characteristic meticulousness and sharpness, did not avoid this tough question. His answer opened up a deeper and darker aspect of our psychological defense mechanisms. Freud argued that to understand nightmares, we need to return to the role of the censor that he mentioned before. Imagine this censor as a gatekeeper or a powerful filter located between our unconscious and preconscious. Its job is to protect the conscious mind from content that is too overwhelming, too conflicting, or too forbidden from the deep unconscious regions. It adjusts, covers, and distorts primal desires into acceptable symbols so that we can sleep soundly without being disturbed. But like any gatekeeper, the censor also has times when it weakens or becomes overloaded. Think of a hydroelectric dam holding back a huge amount of water. But if the compressed water is too great, or the dam structure is weakened, it will break. And that is exactly what happens in a nightmare. A nightmare is when the censor is overwhelmed, overloaded, or fails in its duty. Repressed contents and primal desires or deeply buried painful memories suddenly flood into consciousness in a naked way without being covered or softened. We wake up in horror not because the dream is not wish fulfillment, but because the defense mechanism has failed. This failure forces us to directly face things that we would not want to or could not face while awake. And what usually floods in when the censor collapses are often traumatic experiences and painful events that have been repressed and buried deep in the unconscious. Freud observed that soldiers who experienced war, victims of serious accidents, or those who witnessed horrific scenes frequently encounter recurring nightmares. In these dreams, they do not just see the event again, but also re-experience the fear and helplessness and pain as if it were happening again. This is not a wish to be heard again, but an effort, somewhat chaotic and painful, of the mind to process an event too overwhelming and too horrific to be integrated into consciousness normally. These traumas are pushed down into the unconscious because the conscious mind cannot bear them, but they never disappear. They wait and build up energy so that when the sensor weakens, usually in deep sleep, they explode. The nightmare becomes a faulty safety valve where psychological pressure is released violently and painfully. But Freud also offered another perspective and a more complex layer of meaning for nightmares related to a concept we will explore further in later chapters, which is the superego, also known as the superego. Recall that the superego was described by Freud as our conscience, the inner voice of morality and of social rules and standards that we have absorbed from parents, teachers, and the surrounding environment. It is the inner sheriff always monitoring our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. According to Freud, sometimes a nightmare is not just the failure of the censor when traumas flood in, but it is also a form of punishment by the superego itself against the wrong or forbidden desires of the id, even if those desires only exist in the unconscious. Imagine this, that you have some secret desire that society considers bad or immoral or simply should not be had. For example, you might secretly wish for something unfortunate to happen to someone you dislike, or you crave something taboo. The id wants to fulfill that wish, but your superego in its role as a moral protector does not allow it and feels guilty or even disgusted by those very thoughts. When you sleep, the ID may try to turn these wishes into a fulfilling dream, but before they can bring joy, the superego intervenes in time to turn that dream into a punishment. The dream is no longer a simple wish fulfillment, but becomes a nightmare, a self-inflicted punishment, and a way for the superego to express anger and control to deter the id and protect consciousness from those wrong desires. In this case, the nightmare is still a form of wish fulfillment, but it is a distorted wish, which is the wish to be punished, to cleanse guilt in order to maintain moral purity. So even the most horrific nightmares are not meaningless or mere disorders. According to Freud, they reveal the incredible complexity of our minds as they are a warning bell about an overloaded censor, a desperate attempt to process unresolved traumas, or a voluntary punishment from the superego against forbidden desires. We have gone from the optimistic view of dreams as wish fulfillment to a darker land where our defense mechanisms can collapse and where we ourselves punish ourselves. This is a powerful reminder that human psychology is not just a pleasure-seeking machine, but also an inner battlefield full of conflict, guilt, and the deepest fears. In the next chapter, we will continue to explore other aspects of dreams and dig deeper into how Freud analyzed the symbols and stories that dreams tell. Prepare yourself for a journey with many more surprises. Chapter 7: The Role of Childhood Memories. If you have ever wondered why some dreams feel very primitive and very old, as if they come from somewhere very distant in the soul, then this chapter is for you. Our goal today is to explore together the deep origins of dreams from the past, a past that many times we cannot even remember. Let us start with a simple question, which is, do you remember what you were doing when you were only 2 or 3 years old, or what your early life experiences were like? Surely not much, and this is a phenomenon that psychologists call infantile amnesia. We seem to lack the ability to form clear and easy to remember memories of the first years of our lives. Modern scientists suggest that this may be related to brain development, especially the hippocampus, which plays an important role in forming long-term memories. But Freud, with his sharp insight, had a deeper perspective, as he did not believe that those memories disappeared completely. Instead, they are repressed or become inaccessible in our conscious mind. And guess where they find their way back? Exactly, in our dreams. Freud believed that dreams are the magical door allowing early memory fragments along with impressions and emotions from ancient childhood to rise. They do not appear intact like a documentary film, but in the form of emotional fragments, strange symbolic images, or familiar sensations that we cannot name. Perhaps it is the feeling of helplessness when small, loneliness, or a vague fear from a wordless experience. The day residues of the present are often just an excuse for these childhood memories to have a chance to be reenacted in a night play of the mind. So, what do these memories mean when they are not just random images, but often contain unfulfilled childhood desires? And this is our second key point. Childhood is a period of intense longings, such as wanting to be loved unconditionally, wanting to be cared for, wanting to have a specific toy, wanting to be heard by parents, or wanting to be protected from all dangers. Not all of these longings are met, and the reality is that some of them should not be met so that we learn to adapt to the world. But these longings, whether repressed by socialization or simply unattainable, do not disappear. They burn smolderingly in the subconscious and find ways to express themselves in our dreams. And this is what Freud called wish fulfillment in dreams. Think about how a dream about wealth and about owning everything you want could be a variation of the longing to have parents buy you the toy you wanted in the past. Dreams about fame and being admired by everyone could be the desire to be noticed and to be recognized that you did not receive as a child, or a feeling of being abandoned. Dreams about absolute safety could reflect some unconscious fear from early experiences of insecurity or neglect. These unfulfilled longings, according to Freud, are the most powerful driving forces for adult dreams. They are seeds sown very early, and even if we forget the sower, their fruit continues to bloom in the garden of our subconscious every night. This leads us to the final and deepest point. When viewing dreams as a bridge connecting the present with the inner child. When we dream, we are not just dreaming about what happened yesterday or worries about tomorrow, but we are dreaming about the past and about a version of ourselves that we have forgotten or buried deep. The dream is the bridge and the time tunnel connecting our adult self with that inner child, who is the child that experienced all the first emotions and longings and fears. It is a whisper from a deepest part of us, a part that may feel neglected, hurt, or simply still longing to be recognized. By listening to our dreams, we can begin to understand better the origins of our behaviors and fears and relationships in our current life. Perhaps unnamed anxieties, impulsive actions, or repetitive patterns in our lives all have a connection with experiences and longings from childhood. This is not just about decoding symbols, but about reconnecting with oneself at a deeper level. So do not disregard your dreams. Listen to them, record them, and take time to reflect on the emotions they evoke, because they are trying to tell you a story about yourself and about the origin of your fears, your longings, and even your deepest joys. Through this chapter 7, we have seen that dreams are not just a product of yesterday, but also an echo from very long ago, from the first years of our lives. We are the sum of all experiences, and dreams are the most vivid evidence showing that the past never truly disappears, but only waits for the opportunity to rise in the dark. So what happens when these deep memories and longings intertwine with universal human symbols and stories we have heard since ancient times? We will explore that in the upcoming Chapter 8 as we go deeper into the treasure trove of symbols and myths in dreams. Chapter 8, Secondary Revision. Organizing the Chaos. We have gone through the journey of exploring the deepest layers of the mind, the way repressed desires and forgotten memories find their way out through strange symbolic images. But now, we will stop at a step that I am sure all of us have experienced, and sometimes it is even more difficult than decoding, which is how we remember and retell dreams upon waking up. In Freud's map of dream interpretation, this step has a very specific name called secondary revision. It sounds complicated, but in essence, it is a sophisticated defense mechanism of our mind, an invisible filter that we often do not even realize. Imagine this. You have just woken up from a chaotic dream, full of fragmented images and overlapping emotions with no beginning or end. It is like a shredded film or tapes that follow no logical sequence. But as soon as you try to remember it, try to tell it to someone, or even just think about it in your head, an invisible editor in your mind begins to work. This editor is exactly the secondary revision. It is not a conscious act of yours, but an automatic mechanism our mind uses to make the surreal experiences of the dream appear more plausible and more understandable to the rational mind when we are awake. Our mind, accustomed to the order and logic of the real world, cannot accept the chaos and absurdity of the original dream. It will automatically fill in the gaps, create artificial connections, and sometimes even change important details so that the dream becomes a coherent and more acceptable story. Have you ever experienced this feeling? You wake up with a very vivid memory fragment of a dream, but when you try to express it in words, everything seems to transform, adding a new story or a new explanation that you swear was not in the original experience. That is secondary revision in action. This is the key point that Freud wanted us to realize, that your real dream, the one you experience in the subconscious, is often a jumble of symbols, primal emotions, and random fragments. It does not follow the laws of space, time, or causality. You could be flying in the sky, then suddenly standing in your living room, talking to a long-dead person about a completely unrelated topic, and it all happens at once, without any surprise. But the retold dream is a polished version, filled in the gaps by your waking reason. For example, you dream you are swimming in tomato soup, and then meet a singing green dog. It sounds crazy, doesn't it? But when you retell it, your mind might automatically add that I swam in tomato soup because I was hungry, and the green dog sang to soothe me. Suddenly, there is a reason, a plot, and a connection created, even though it did not exist in the original dream at all. This difference is extremely important for decoding. If we only analyze the dream that has undergone secondary revision, we will miss the most authentic messages and the most original symbols that the subconscious is trying to convey. We will be analyzing a summary that has been altered, not the original. It is like wanting to analyze an abstract work of art, but only looking at a copy that has been edited to be more understandable. You will miss its entire uniqueness, complexity, and true message. So, how do we overcome this trap of secondary revision? How can we access the raw material of the dream before the waking reason has a chance to edit it? The golden advice that Freud and almost every dream researcher give is to record your dream immediately when you wake up. Do not hesitate. Do not let yourself become fully awake, and do not give your reason a chance to intervene. The moment you open your eyes, even while you are still groggy, try to record as many details as possible. You should be prepared by keeping a notebook and pen right by the bed. Or if you prefer technology, use your phone to record your voice or take quick notes through some very good dream journaling apps, meaning whatever way is most convenient for you to do it immediately. Then, write down everything, from keywords and images to the most fragmented emotions, without trying to create a coherent story. You just need to download the raw data out of your mind before that editor can do its work, because even vague feelings or unrelated pieces have value. Finally, do not judge and do not worry about grammar, spelling, or logic, since these are your personal notes where the highest goal is to capture as many original details as possible. I remember once dreaming I was riding a bicycle under the sea, and a blue whale swam by. Upon waking, I automatically thought that maybe I wanted to explore the ocean or was looking for peace. But when I recorded it immediately, I realized the dominant feeling at the time was anxiety and pressure from not being able to breathe underwater, even though the scenery was beautiful. That feeling of anxiety was immediately trimmed away by my reason to create a more positive story, because I hate the feeling of helplessness. If I hadn't recorded it right away, I would have missed an extremely important emotional clue. Secondary revision is clear evidence that our minds constantly seek order, even if that order must be created from chaos. But for dream interpretation, it is a major barrier, a veil covering the deepest messages. Become a true dream detective by learning to bypass the gates of reason and go straight into the room containing the most raw and original data of your subconscious. That is the first and most important step, so that you can truly begin decoding your dreams in the way Freud envisioned. In the next chapter, we will begin to go deeper into the specific decoding methods that Freud proposed. But before that, please practice recording your dreams, as it is the first key to opening the door of the subconscious, and so the fascinating journey of exploring the inner world through Sigmund Freud's The Interpretation of Dreams has come to an end. A journey that was not easy at all, was it? It is not a book to be read quickly or to skim through the pages, but to be pondered, to be faced, and sometimes to feel a bit confused and overwhelmed by what lies within us. Freud has invited us to enter a land that we previously often avoided or even feared, which is the darkness of the unconscious, where secret desires, hidden fears, and forgotten memories reside. At first glance, it may seem scary, like a dark cellar filled with unnamed mysteries or shapeless monsters that we create in our own minds. But it is precisely in that darkness that an extraordinary power and an invaluable treasure trove of information about who we are lies hidden. And the interpretation of dreams is the old oil lamp that Freud has placed in our hands to encourage us to bravely light it up. It not only illuminates the hidden corners and the nooks that seemingly no one touches, but also helps us realize that the demons we imagine are sometimes just parts of ourselves longing to be heard and understood. They are echoes from the past, aspirations of the present, and worries for the future, seeking a way to manifest. The core message I want you to take away after this video and after this journey is what I always keep in mind when venturing into the world of psychology, which is, do not fear the darkness in your mind, but light the lamp of understanding. Understanding does not make problems, fears, or soul scars disappear, but it gives us the strength to face, to accept, and sometimes to resolve them in a healthier way. It helps us no longer be victims of what we do not understand, but become the controller and director of our own lives. Perhaps after this video, you will look at your dreams with a different eye, no longer as random, meaningless images of a resting brain, but as messages and whispers from deep within, which is a unique way for your very self to communicate with you. Every dream is a door or a window leading into the secret garden of the soul. Although we are not all professional psychoanalysts, we can certainly become explorers and decoders of the symbols and metaphors in our own dreams. Do not hesitate to listen to the inner voice, even if sometimes it says things we do not want to hear or things that make us think a lot. And speaking of strange dreams, I am very curious to hear your stories. I myself have countless dreams that still haunt me or make me wonder to this day. So how about you? Go to the comment section right now and share the strangest, most memorable, or even scariest dream you have ever had. Tell me how you felt when you woke up, or what your thoughts about it were at that time. Do not worry about having to decode it in the true Freudian style or finding any deep meaning. Just share your story. Together, we create an open space where everyone can comfortably share the darkest corners of their souls. Perhaps through each other's stories, we will find interesting commonalities and fresh perspectives on this rich and diverse inner world. Sometimes just saying something that seems crazy will make you see that you are not alone, and I will read all of your comments. If the journey of discovering human psychology and the mysterious corners of the mind through the lens of masters like Freud has sparked something in you, has made you more curious about yourself and the world around you, then do not forget to press the subscribe button and the bell icon next to it. This is just the beginning, because the channel will continue to be a place where we together flip through classic pages, delve into the mysteries of the human mind, and understand more about ourselves and those around us. We will together seek new lamps of understanding to illuminate not only dreams, but also behaviors, emotions, and the complex stories hidden behind every person. Every subscription, every like and every comment of yours is a huge motivation for me to continue creating even higher quality, deeper, and more engaging content. I believe that the more we understand the inner world, the more we are capable of living a fuller and more meaningful life. Remember that life is not just what we see, hear, or experience on the outside, but also a vast and infinite universe waiting to be discovered inside each of us. Thank you for joining me in this video and in this exciting journey. See you in the next journeys where we will together light new lamps of understanding.